Welcome to 5 Minutes With, a podcast where we connect with team members from across the country about their journeys, life stories, and whatever else that comes up. I'm your host, Yosef Saleh, and it only takes 5 minutes to connect. Let's welcome today's guest, the breakout star of the You're Not Alone video from last year and funding associate from our Atlanta office, Lillian Tucker. Hi, Lillian.
Hi, Yosef. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
Oh no, the honor's all mine. So that video was towards the beginning of work from home. How do you feel now when we're nearly a year into it?
Well, a few months prior to quarantine, I was actually selected to be part of Funding's work from home pilot. So I've had a little bit of time to adapt. However, it's so great that HCA made working from home possible for employees during this time, especially employees with kids. It definitely helps with that work-life balance.
Now, I heard a very interesting story about how you came to HCA. Tell me a little bit about where you were before HCA and that whole story of how you started here.
Absolutely. I could never forget it. So prior to my start at HCA, I was a waitress, and I remember running a tad bit late for work that day. And after entering the restaurant, I stopped by the hostess, and she informed me that there was a large party in my section already seated. So I quickly made my way over to greet the guests, and it turns out one of the guests present was Keith Myrex, Atlanta's collections director. Now, one of the many things that caused me to stand out from other waitresses is that I never used pen or paper, and I would solely go off of memory. So by the end of the dining experience, Keith and his colleagues, they thanked me for my service. And he handed me his business card and extended a possible job opportunity. I just remember thinking it was such a nice gesture. And later, I noticed the job was for collections. So my jaw, it slightly dropped simply because the stigma that comes with collections. So I was a little hesitant at the time because I really just feared losing myself in the role. But after the initial phone interview, I spoke with senior leadership who advised me at the time how HCA, we really take a different approach while still keeping the customer first. And that helped me so much see myself in that role.
So what's a highlight you remember from your time at Collections?
I would have to say it was the people that I worked with. Not only did I gain a mentor, but I also gained long-lasting relationships with my peers.
Well, especially now, since working from home, I know I definitely miss that in-person connection.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about your initial interest in funding and how you actually transitioned into the team.
Well, I considered funding to be part of the front line of business, and I was so intrigued by the policies, procedures, and the good judgment that came with the role. So I took the initiative to first set up a meeting with my UL at the time, and we discussed career pathing. And from there, we set up side-by-side sessions just to get a better understanding of the role. And after each session, I would send takeaway notes, not only to the funder that I shadowed, but also their UL in regards to what I've learned. And once I was finally in the role, my transition, it was pretty smooth. The best practices sharing from just my peers, that served me very well.
Yes, that's definitely a great tip, the side-by-sides and the shadowing. Just because when you are trying to get into a new position, whether it be a new team or department, I think that time spent is definitely valuable. So, I hear congratulations are in order. You were engaged during quarantine. Tell me about that.
Thank you. Yes, I got engaged on March 14, 2020 to my longtime boyfriend who happens to also be an employee of HCA.
Well, congratulations once again. So, just to round us out, what's a piece of advice, especially during the pandemic, you'd like to leave the audience with?
No matter how big or small, practicing self care can make a world of a difference. For example, I love to cook and I like to create those picture perfect entrees for my family. But I noticed that I would just rush and make my own plate with less care. So I've since made a conscious effort to spend time, if not more, just perfecting my own.
Self-care, got it. Let me go exfoliate right after this. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you to my guest Lillian Tucker and our listeners for tuning in. I'm your host Yosef Soleh, and it only takes 5 minutes to connect.